Thank you, sir.
You're on, Frank.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Scituate Conservation Commission meeting of February 10th. According to my phone, we're a few minutes late. According to the clock on the wall, it's 6 o'clock. So I'm going to read a couple of quick things. Here, this meeting is being held virtual as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts 2021, temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You're hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during the meeting may be recorded by the town of Scituate in accordance with the open meeting law. And number two, the town of Scituate has a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The Scituate Conservation Commission is committed to providing an environment of respect during our meetings. We ask all members to interact in a polite manner, even when there's disagreement. We value the participation of our community and want all participants, including marginalized and minoritized communities, to feel welcome and respected. We ask the committee members and all that participate to commit to these standards and support and respect our community. With that said, we have an agenda. And if someone wants to make a motion to accept that agenda,
I make a motion, we accept the agenda as written. I don't think there's any add-ons. Do you have any add-ons, Frank?
Not tonight. Anybody else?
Not really, no.
Okay. Jen?
Just to let you know, there's a few continuances.
Okay. Let's get this. We have a second on the agenda.
I'll second it.
That's from Brendan. All in favor, Richard?
Yes.
And Eric?
Yes.
And Frank, yes. Great. Okay. The first one is the Minot Beach parking lot. I think we're opening that now as a notice of intent. On February 10th, 2025 at 6 p.m., the Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws, for notice of intent filed by the Town of Scituate DPW to improve the recreational kayak launch parking lot for Minot Beach. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend, and information to access the meeting is available on the agenda posted on the website. And we have maybe Sean McCarthy.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission.
Good evening.
Sean McCarthy with the Scituate DPW. With me tonight also is Katerina Korolov from Strong Tree Engineering. She's the environmental scientist working on this project. Up on the screen before you now is the existing paved parking lot off of Bailey's Causeway in the Minot section of Scituate. Contains 28 parking spaces and one poorly located handicap spot. As part of the improvements, we'll increase the parking with 18 spaces and 2 handicap parking spots, as well as a crosswalk. The second page, okay, you have it now. We've modified the abutters access easement to the north, and we've highlighted the areas of improvement with plantings shown in green along the western edge and northern edge of the main parking lot. We were before the commission a couple of weeks ago with an RDA and received a positive determination. So a notice of intent was submitted, and that's before you this evening, showing some of the items we discussed a couple of weeks ago at the last meeting. Katerina could go into some of the resource areas if you'd like to expand on that.
Maybe just a brief overview, Sean, if Katerina's ready to go, just what areas we're in and how that's been addressed.
Hello, everyone. Yes, thank you for for hearing us tonight. So, as you will see here, at this parking lot is located along the edge of a salt marsh, which is to the west and northwest, and there is a seasonal channel there that is used for kayaking. So there's a boat launch right up at the north side there. And so I'm also told that recently Sean mentioned that the DEP does potentially consider this part of an barrier beach. Um, in order to complete our improvement work, we have made every effort to limit disturbance. Disturbances will be temporary in nature, and ultimately, um, all of this replacement and upgrade work will, in fact, improve the resource areas. We did speak 2 weeks ago when we discussed this project. We did mention how we're improving the drainage. The storm scepter at the northwest there is actually a huge benefit because what it does is it allows for pollutants to be filtered out rather than how it is now, essentially running off directly into the resource areas. And we are actually lifting the grade of the parking lot in such a way so that the surface water flow will actually flow away from the resource areas. So, and then as Sean mentioned, we've added some mitigation planting along the north and northwest per the board's suggestions. So technically, this project does fall under the scope of a limited ecological restoration project. Typically, those types of projects are larger in scale. However, because this is a replacement of a kayak launch that has been here even before the EPA itself was promulgated in the early 70s, 1970s. Therefore, this project is actually, these types of replacement projects are considered worthwhile for that reason. And so there's an extra incentive there to improve the resource areas through this type of replacement and upgrade work. As far as the recent comment from the DEP that this might be considered a barrier beach. Again, as I mentioned, ultimately all of our efforts are in order to limit all disturbances to the best extent that we can during the actual construction work, and ultimately to improve the area overall.
Thank you. Jen?
I don't think I have anything new to add. Yes, we did get a DEP number and the comments that Katerina mentioned. You're repaving an existing parking lot and continuing to use the area for parking. Good that there's some improvements to bring to the area. And it's helpful to see the areas that'll be replanted, that won't be pavement, but will be disturbed in the process.
Penny?
Yeah, I have no problem whatsoever with this project. I think it's a great project. It needs to be done. I like how the water, any runoff is going to come towards the street instead of going into the marsh. I think that's absolutely wonderful. And then it will be recharged or whatever they're doing in those ditches before it goes back into the marsh. I really just see this as a very positive project. I know some people don't like the asphalt, but it's been there since I was a kid, and that's a long time ago, people. So
Yes, it
I
is.
don't, I mean, why go back when there was a bathhouse there too, a concrete building. But I guess my only question, Sean, is where the town has taken over the property that's always been the town is used privately, where are those cars going to park now that park behind the house there?
They'll probably be in for some sort of agreement with the town, as the resident to the north obtained an easement from
Yeah,
the
to
select
get
board.
back there.
Yeah, yeah. So there'll be some discussions. The abutters were notified
Okay.
through the notice of intent process, and we did not receive any calls on the
Okay, because I
project.
know they store a boat and some other stuff, and you know, if we're trying to get more parking, we sure don't need boats there in the summertime.
Right, and I didn't
And,
notice any in the water that we
no,
talked about last time. So, but
yeah,
there are a couple on the land. Yeah.
yeah, right,
So we'll have
right.
to track down the owners of those. Yep. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, that's about all I have to say, Frank. I do think it's going to be good, especially where the drainage is going now, because now it just goes right into the marsh.
Got it.
Okay.
Thanks, Penny.
You.
Richard?
Yeah, Linda and I took a ride up there over the weekend, and oh yeah, and now and then seeing with the um picture that we've got in front of us and the adjustments they made in the last 2 weeks, I'm to make it a little shorter than Penny. I'm good with it.
Thank you.
I
Um,
like to talk.
Eric?
Yeah, I think the changes to the plan from 2 weeks ago look good. That's all I got.
Okay. Do we have anybody in the audience this time?
Don't forget Brendan.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry, Brendan.
That's
My
okay.
apologies.
It looks fine to me.
Okay.
Now the audience.
Anybody in the audience? You have a hand
Yes, I
up.
do have a hands up. Carol Tremblay, I will unmute you.
Yeah, hi, this is Robert and Carol Tremblay. We're abutters to the parking lot, and just want to say this is a terrific plan. We're very happy with this.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Tremblay. Anybody else? I just a couple of real quick questions, Sean. So one of the things we talked about the last time was that shed and whether it was going to stay or go. It looks like it's staying for now.
Yeah, at the moment. Yep. I spoke with Kevin, the director of public works, about that.
Okay.
And I mean, we're trying to make the improvements without being too disruptive.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I know that the kayak launch
It's a disaster.
I noticed, thanks for the photos actually, Sean. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
It looks like some of the concrete on at least one of those blocks is really deteriorated. And do you have anything in is it possible that we can just mention that, Jen, so that repairs to that are conditioned as part of this, maybe with some sort of plan? We'll have to figure out whether we're going to deal with it or work with DPW to do it. Maybe that could be your mitigation, Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know we talked about adding a handrail or some type of slip resistant surface to it, which is one of the reasons I went out there. And then when I saw that lower block, I thought, okay, this needs a little more. The plans had already been submitted. I mean, we certainly can incorporate either the replacement of that block in the construction drawing set. I think we should have something in the orders to either remove that now while we have the construction equipment on site, or make the repairs to it if that's how you want to go. Yeah.
I'd like to keep something there. I mean, it seemed like it was pretty well received. I am a little concerned, like that's also where you're planning on putting that sort of riprap area. So, for people to be able to access it safely. The parking, there'll be a couple of cars parked right there too.
And we could stripe out a spot so that there isn't parking there.
It would be great if there could be
Yeah.
a little space somehow worked into
Right.
that.
Yep.
Maybe, Jen, is it possible to just have some sort of generic thing in the orders that um, this can be addressed separate, like a
Make it the mitigation, Frank.
Yes, we can include something in the orders to work on the kayak launch, and they do have some language on the plan as well that they plan to do something to upgrade the safety of it.
okay. All right.
Right.
That's my it's my 2 cents. Take them.
I'll make a motion to close and issue, Jen, or just close.
You can close an issue if yep.
Okay. I make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Speak up, boys.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Second from Brendan. All in favor, Richard,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Yes.
Hello.
and Frank. Yes. Great. Sean,
Yay.
thanks a lot. Thanks for working this through with us. We appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah,
Look
thank
forward
you.
to see that. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Good
Commissioner.
night.
Hi. Let's see. Now we're on to
The school.
Hatherley Cushing Elementary School.
Yeah.
On February 10th, 2025 at 6 p.m., the Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700 Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the notice of intent application of the Town of Scituate for construction of a new school, parking area, athletic fields, and other located at 72 Ann Vinyl Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Information on how to access the virtual meeting will be available on the agenda posted on the town website. And I'm not sure, who do we have presenting that?
I don't know, but can we get the colored one back up?
Mark
sorry,
from LEC, were you going to start?
Tom Hinglesberg from Doran Whittier. I can start.
Okay.
I'd like to just, first of all, thank everyone for hearing our project description tonight. And just wanted to introduce some of the team members who are in the meeting today. Mark Manganello from LEC, Steve Ventresca and Brian Biagini from Niche, Kelly Connolly from Terra Inc., Don Walter, who I'm sure some of you know is a Scituate resident and partner in charge of this project, principal in charge, Doran Whittier. And then from our owner's project manager, Vertex, we have Steve Theron and Allison Mahar. So thank you again. And what I'm going to do is just give a brief overview of the project scope and then hand it off to Mark. So the drawing that we're looking at right now, again, is the overall site plan. And it also has some of the vehicular circulation arrows overlaid on top of it. But generally speaking, the existing school is right underneath where that long, skinny playground is shown right now and underneath the surface parking lot on the right-hand side of the slide. So the general idea is to build the new school on the what is right now the Flannery Field, more or less. And the existing school will be in operation while the new school is being constructed. So that's an interesting process that we can go into if you'd like to. But the circulation, as you can see, is comprised of two entrances. We're proposing adding another curb cut, another entrance. The main vehicular entrance with the 3 lanes is just east of where the existing entrance is now. We're scooting it a little bit more to the east. There'll be 1 lane in, 2 lanes out. The blue lines indicate the circulation for parent cars So they go up and around and queue and then drop off in that loop around the parking area. The purple lines indicate folks that are parents of pre-K students. They actually can pull up and park in that first front row of parking. And that's designed specifically for them to park, get out of their cars, and escort their little kids into the building, and then they get back and leave. And then the second entrance, a little further to the west on Ann Vinyl Road, is the dedicated bus entrance, primarily for buses, but it would also be a service entrance to access the back of the building. Um, and you can see that yellow line along there. The lines are broken where we have kind of the drop-off pickup areas, and then solid where the vehicles are moving around. We have a service yard in the back, and that's sized so fairly large semi-vehicle can get back in there. They basically pull ahead and then back into a loading dock, which is sticking out from the back of the building. That's also where the garbage and recycling dumpsters are kept, so that'll all be sort of tucked behind that loading dock there, so not visible from the street. The recreation facilities are kind of concentrated in the back of the site. We have the long skinny playground is kind of divided into a segment for the youngest children on the left, and then a little bit older children on the right. And then the northern playground is for the grades 3, 5 kids who are, generally into the more active games and so forth. But there is some play equipment up there as well. And then Flannery Field is being reconstituted. It's just about the same size as the field that's there now. It's a little bit wider and a little bit shorter than the field that's there now, but pretty much the same as the existing field. What Mark is going to talk about and what you all are interested in most, I'm sure, are the resource areas, the two wetlands that are on the site, and those are in the northwest, upper left and southwest lower left corners of the site. There is also another resource area across the road, across Ann Vinyl Road, and its setbacks do protrude onto the site. Um, Most of that area, if not all of that area,
Can't
is
hear him now.
previously developed. So if there,
I can't hear him now.
I'm sorry, did I blank out?
You were
No,
good. We heard you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, just thought somebody said they couldn't hear me. Okay, so
Right.
any questions
Hold on a
on?
second. Richard, are you having trouble hearing this?
I did for a minute. He's back now.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions on the overall site organization or anything like that before I turn it over to Mark?
I
Good.
have a quick question, Frank.
Go ahead.
The only problem I have with this whole thing, and it isn't to do with Concom, but the Flannery Field, you're moving it, and so that's eliminating that parking lot down below for field, for field play on the weekends. And I'm just a little concerned, is there going to be enough parking in the upper level for that type of thing? Weekend?
Yes, yes. The number of spaces on the site right now, um, and this is kind of an approximate count because as you know,
Right.
that lower lot is gravel. It's
Right.
around 100, 105 or something like that.
Oh.
The proposed parking that we're looking at here is 140, what is it, 143 spaces.
Oh, that's
Um,
fine.
yeah.
Okay, I was just a little concerned on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so there's definitely a net increase in parking
Yeah.
site.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Moving on, Frank.
Eric?
Nothing yet.
Okay.
No.
Brendan?
No questions yet.
Okay. Richard?
No, no questions yet.
Okay. I'm sorry, Jen, I jumped over you.
Yeah, same. I would like to hear Mark's comments.
Yeah.
Okay. Mark, I guess that would probably be the
Sorry, Mark, before you start, I just wanted to correct something I said. The conventional spaces on the site proposed is 147. And then we do also have 29 overflow spaces proposed. Those are in that light green line work around the edges of this drawing. There's 3 areas, and those are going to be overflow spaces that will be structured out of grass paved material. So
Okay.
they're still permeable, but they would be kind of, overflow for events.
Thank
So
you.
total 176 on site.
Yep, that's great.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll pick it up there. Again, Mark Manganello with LEC Environmental. We were initially engaged in this project back in May of 2023, at which time we completed a wetland delineation at the property. The wetland boundaries were surveyed and an existing conditions plan was submitted to the commission as part of an ANRAD application in July of 2023. Some of you will recall that you hired a peer reviewer to review those wetland boundaries. And after some minor revisions to the delineation, the wetland boundaries were approved through an order of resource area delineation. The development plans before you tonight depict those wetland boundaries as approved previously by this commission. As Tom mentioned, the on-site wetlands include a BVW, bordering vegetated wetland, which extends onto the northwestern portion of the property. You can see it in this existing conditions plan up on the screen now. There's also an isolated vegetated wetland on the southwestern corner near Anvinal Road in the gravel parking area, which has been referenced. And there's also BVW located across the street south of Anvinal Road. There's no bordering land subject to flooding on this property. There's no riverfront area. There's no rare species habitat. There's no ACEC, and there's no outstanding resource waters. In addition to the other constraints described by Tom, the project's been designed to protect and enhance these wetlands and their buffers through maintaining a 50-foot buffer wherever possible, and where it's not feasible or in locations where the 50-foot buffer is previously disturbed, by incorporating native plantings to restore buffer function. The most significant area of the project activity in the buffer zone is in the front of the project near the IVW. The buffer zone, including large portions of the 50-foot buffer in this area, are currently occupied by the gravel parking area and manicured grass. The project will result in a significant enhancement of this previously disturbed 50-foot buffer with a combination of enhancement plantings within the bioretention basin and plantings within the bioretention basin to be constructed partially in this inner buffer area. And I think, Jen, if you could pull up the planting graphic right now, that will help illustrate the scope of the restoration in the buffer areas.
Here, what
The
sheet am I looking
landscape
for?
plan,
Yes,
is that page 23?
it's near the very end.
All right,
Sounds
I'm going to flip through it. Let's see. Pardon me. This what we got? Yeah.
no, that's
No,
not
keep going.
Keep going. One more.
One more. Yeah,
Oh,
There
there,
you go.
there it is.
there it
There
is.
you go.
So this plan's really key to understanding the scope of the activities in the buffer zone and the scope of the restoration and mitigation in the buffer zone. So here, this is the northwestern corner. You can see the 50-foot and 100-foot buffer zone are depicted on this. They're kind of light and difficult to see, but there's only a small, I think it's 660 square feet of the 50-foot buffer zone that will be disturbed by the project in this area. And that area is really temporary disturbance, which will be restored with native plantings and seed mix after the grading is complete for the access driveway. The other work in the 50 to 100, which is being highlighted perfectly here by Jen, I think, or somebody.
Josh has got the control there.
Josh, thank you. You can see that it's a portion of the access driveway, a walkway, there's some lawn areas, and then to the left there at the jog in the property line, that's a gravel wetland, and that area will be seeded with a wetland seed mix to provide some wetland functions as part of the stormwater treatment system that Steve will discuss in a moment. So it's a very small portion of the 50-foot buffer zone in this northwest corner that's being disturbed, and that portion is being restored after the initial disturbance occurs. And then down at the front of the property, if we could scroll down there, the existing gravel driveway is very close to the edge of the isolated vegetated wetland. So the 50-foot buffer zone there is being restored with plantings that are hatched in that upper hatching inside the 50-foot buffer zone. That's currently a lawn area that will be restored with native plantings. And then further down, a portion of the bio retention basin is within the 50-foot buffer, and that's going to include some native plantings as well to provide some improvements to ecological function of the buffer zone. The outer 50 to 100 in this area, you can see is a portion of the access roadway, some more bio retention, and other walkway features and lawn features in the 100-foot buffer. So that's an overview of the work in the resource area. And well, there's no work in the resource areas, the work in the buffer zones. The project's really been designed carefully to protect the integrity of the resource areas and to improve the protection of the resource areas through the plantings in the buffer zone. And perhaps I'll pause there, and if you all have any questions about this part of it, we can do that before kicking it over to Steve to discuss stormwater.
Okay. Jen, do you want to?
I would like to hear about the stormwater.
Okay. Richard?
Well, I'm assuming that we have a definition of native species plants and a planting plan that'll be included somewhere along there. Other than that, at least for now, I don't have any other questions.
Yeah, this plan in front of you does have all the species list, all the quantities, the native plantings in the buffer zones. You just can't see them in this view. They're up at the top.
Okay.
Penny?
No, I like what I see.
Yeah. Brendan?
Yeah, no questions yet.
Eric?
I think the plan looks great in terms of the mitigation measures and the plants associated with it. I did just have a quick question though, and it might not even be something to address. But in the waiver language, under invasive trees, it's noted that there's a stand of native invasive species, non-native and invasive species along the southeast and southern property lines. I understand that they're being retained for privacy and visual buffering. I think that makes a lot of sense. I am wondering, though, if a successional plan with the plants that are going to be introduced in that area come to maturity and provide the additional screening and buffer, that some work can be done to mitigate some of the invasives from encroaching on all of the good work that you guys are doing. I understand, like I said, the visual component and being a barrier to the residences adjacent, that's important. But I think it's also important to look at the longevity of the project and the work that you're going through now to introduce all these native species and increase the buffer zone functionality. If at some point, once those reach a certain maturity, of some of those invasive species could be mitigated. Again, I'm just throwing that out there. That's all I have right now.
Okay. Do you want to speak to that at the moment? I don't know. I guess that would be something with the schools as we go forward. I don't know that we can really have anything. Just trying to think of how we could incorporate that into the orders.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, so I just thrown it out there
Yeah,
and
yeah.
seeing
No,
if
it's a good point. As you know, you hate to see all the mature trees go, but to your point, some of them aren't great. It would be nice over time to swap them out. I just trying to think of other than saying it, how do we? Oh, let's think of,
Oh, sorry.
no, we can think about that one.
Yeah.
Okay. With the wetlands, before we get in the stormwater, Mark, I had a few questions. So you mentioned the basin at the front of the building, and is there any detail on that one? Like, they did it at the safety building and whatnot, rather than just a grass um, basin that, sometimes put a few rocks, some other plants, have it be something a little more than just a simple basin.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that, trying to balance function and aesthetics and safety as well. The hatching you can see sort of like the diagonal hatching line work
Right.
that that denotes a particular native seed mix that was selected for the areas, and then around the perimeter there's kind of a fringing hatching that's narrow. That's a series of native plantings around the perimeter to enhance it aesthetically and functionally. Um, and I think beyond that, probably Steve can speak more about the balance between plantings and function in these bioretention basins. It's more in his wheelhouse than it is mine. I don't know if that answers your question completely.
Well, it'd be nice to see some. Are they fenced in, or are they just naturally protected with planting? I can't tell depth or anything from this.
Yeah, Tom, how did we land on that? I know we had a conversation about fencing, or did we include fencing or not?
I think fencing is included right now. Kelly, I think, is on the line. Kelly, if you, Kelly Connolly, if you wanted to talk to that at all.
Sure. Hello, everyone. This is Kelly Conley from Terra Inc. I'm the landscape architect for the project. And the hatch that was being mentioned that's kind of got the little bubbles in it, that's actually got the fence embedded within it. So that low native shrub mix is basically trying to diminish the view of the fence before you get into the greater wetland seed mix on the inside. And that is to, as I said, to minimize view. And the fence is there just because, as Steve will talk about, the water times and how things are draining for how long, that there's a sense of protection for the children out front in these basin areas.
Okay. Well, just want to sure they note it, but DEP gives us some guidelines on fencing so that animals can move back and forth. Hopefully that can be done and still make it safe, but keeping it up off the ground a little bit. They've just got some simple guidelines for that sort of thing
Absolutely.
that would be more helpful. And then I've had to see it. I've got a different plan here, but you call it a gravel wetland. Maybe Mark or somebody can explain that one to me. I don't know.
Yeah, Steve's going to talk about that in detail. I think what I will say in from the wetlands perspective is that the wetland seed mix proposed for that will allow it, and the hydrology that's achieved by directing water there will allow it to function more or less like a wetland. And Steve can talk a little bit more about the cross section and the soils and the gravel and how it all works, but it's a nice alternative to the conventional stormwater basin that, does provide some ecological function.
Okay. All right. Well, let's do the stormwater piece. We will open this up to the public. Just we'll get through the engineers and then we can hear that. So,
Hi, everybody. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Stephen Ventresca with Niche Engineering. I don't know if we could, if there was another drawing that we had submitted earlier that shows the stormwater features that are highlighted. I don't know if it's in this plan set.
Yeah, Jen, this is the one that I sent you separately. Yeah, there you
we
go.
go. Thank you. This will sort of help pinpoint the ones, the storm systems and that we're proposing for the site, and then obviously the wetland delineation and then the buffers that Mark had just discussed. So if we start, I guess we'll start at Ann Vinyl Road at the bottom and we'll go counterclockwise. And so as Tom and Mark mentioned, we have two entrances. The one on the left is for buses and the one on the right is for vehicles. And so the current location of the gravel parking lot now, we're proposing to create a basin, infiltration basin, and that's what's depicted in this green color that we're showing here. And you can see it's within the 150-foot buffers. And because it is within the 50-foot buffer here, we are improving the current situation from a gravel lot to something that's more porous. And as discussed, we are looking to provide some plantings here to provide for nutrient and water uptake during storm events, and then allowing for that to drain out within 72 hours. The step back here, because it's an elementary school, because we need to meet ADA requirements, we are providing an ADA path into the site, sidewalk-wise. This requires us to cut into the site a little bit. Because groundwater, our estimated seasonal groundwater is high here, we've had to employ a number of different BMPs or tactics for our stormwater control. And because, as you know, the town has a rate and volume requirement, it's very challenging. So we had to use a lot of the tools within our stormwater tool belt to achieve the rate and volume reductions. So the infiltration basin at the front here is one of those places where we're allowed or can infiltrate without impacting groundwater or getting that 2-foot separation that is required. So that's what we're proposing here, and we're able to achieve that separation. As we start to go counterclockwise around, just to the right of that basin, there's a detention basin or subsurface system that is that's lined, has an impermeable liner, so it does not allow water to infiltrate into the ground because we are within that 2-foot separation from estimated seasonal high groundwater. So we're just holding water there. We're providing water quality treatment through water quality units. Water is being captured there, held, and then slowly released. And as we continue around the site, to the next one is incorrectly labeled as an infiltration system. So put an X through that, please. This is also another detention, sorry, to the right side. So I think we're around 4 o'clock. Yeah, thank you. So you can put an X through that infiltration system. That's incorrect. That is a detention system. It says holding water. It's also aligned. It is providing water quality treatment, and it's capturing water from the 2 parking lots that are here and some of the circulation roadway or driveway that's off to the right. It's capturing that water, putting it through that system, and then directing it out towards the 18-inch diameter drain pipe that's existing in Ann Vinyl Road. As we continue around to Flannery Field, we're providing another detention system that has, again, it's lined, it's underneath the field. It's that sort of lighter shaded purple at the top of the page there. Again, capturing runoff from the field itself, and capturing runoff from the driveway that's at the top of the plan there, excuse me, and capturing that water, providing water quality, and then discharging it towards the wetland. And you can see the discharges just at the 50-foot buffer, which is highlighted in that green line. Mm-hmm. And then the 100-foot buffer is that orange line. And then as we start to come around the page past the wetland, this is the gravel wetland that was just discussed. And so gravel wetland is similar to what you have out at Scituate Public Safety. This one's designs have sort of changed or improved since that was built. This is a little bit more straightforward, I'll call it. It's essentially I'm gonna 3 to 4 feet of gravel that's constantly in groundwater, and then you have a layer of pea stone, and then above that you have about 8 inches or so of wetland type soils to prevent the water from just going right through completely or water coming back out. So what it's doing is it's holding the water in the ground. You have some plants, you have a seed mix there, as Mark mentioned, a wetland seed mix. So that will grow and provide some nutrient and water uptake. But what you don't see here, and what's difficult to see, is there are a series of pipes that are in. If you could zoom in on the gravel wetland, there's some dashed lines there, and those are under drains, if you will. And those have riser pipes that have perforations through them. And what that is doing is allowing the water that collects up above in the basin of the gravel wetland to then enter into those pipes as the water increases in the basin, get into the gravel, and essentially push out the water that's there out down, in this case, page south towards the wetland, but then provide water quality. So it is holding some of the water in the basin up above itself, and then there's holding water in the gravel underneath the soils that you don't see. And so that's what those that dashed line is showing. And then the purple line that's showing the drain line coming out, there's a structure in the wetland, gravel wetland itself towards the point. That is taking that stormwater as it slowly goes through the gravel underneath, and then it discharges it towards the wetland. And then we have an emergency overflow in case there are bigger storms greater than that 100-year storm that we designed to, in these cases, to travel overland. We do understand that we are within that 50-foot buffer as it's shown here. The grading is very challenging on this site, so we tried to be mindful as much as possible. And if we can continue to pull that outlet back, we will look to do that. But this is where we land right now with that outlet. And then at this point, I'm going to shift over to the building itself, which is outlined in orange. And if you don't mind, I think it's Josh doing an excellent job. Thank you. So the building in orange is the outline of the new building. It's much bigger than the current building for program space. This is typical of what we see in new school buildings. Put the new building where the field is currently and keep the existing building going. And then when that you can finally turn over to the new building, then that where the new building was becomes the field and parking and play areas. So we are increasing impervious area here by over 3 acres. And this is where the challenge comes into cutting into the site. Estimated seasonal groundwater is high. Where do we infiltrate to meet the town's requirements for rate and volume? And so in the dark gray, or excuse me, dark purple boxes that are shown there, we are capturing the roof runoff from the new building and infiltrating underneath the building. Is unusual in a suburban site. In urban areas where land is a challenge and where we need to maximize the space, it's more common. This is a site where we determined that we needed to do something a little more innovative. And so we're providing infiltration underneath the building. In the very middle of the building, that is within the building itself, so an enclosed space, but underneath the slab with some separation. And then just to the south of that is one of the courtyards in the building. Again, providing infiltration underneath the courtyard. And then we have a third infiltration system just outside the building at the one of the exits or entry areas. I believe that's in the kindergarten wing. We're providing some more infiltration. So all of those 3 systems are interconnected. We have outlets to the street, and we also are providing emergency outlets at different points in case there's a storm bigger than that 100-year storm to let water out during those times. Just so the commission is aware and the public's aware, we are designing to the higher storm standards that are not a requirement by the state, but that we do as a design for all of our stormwater controls, which is the Atlas 14 stormwater values. And so we're meeting those higher rates of runoff. We're providing capture for those higher storm events while also meeting the rate and runoff for the town. And I will say that we did receive a peer review from Hosley and Witten. I believe it was the early last week. We are reviewing their comments, and then we will address them in the coming weeks, providing written responses back to them. So based on the design that we've currently are showing you and that we've provided to the town, we believe that we're meeting the rate and volume requirements for the town, and that we're meeting the requirements for the state as well, with obviously some additional comments that we need to provide or responses back to the comments that we received from Horsley Witten. I did a lot of talking, so I'm interested to hear what you're thinking, and hope I can answer them. And if there are some details we do have details here. We wanted to be mindful of requirements and not providing information sort of outside the submittals. So if there are details that we can provide to you, in the coming weeks, we're certainly happy to do that to help you understand what we're trying to do here. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me circle back to Jen, I guess.
I think we had a good overview of what was happening in the buffer areas, and everything going on that westerly side. I guess one of the concerns is going to be while the construction is going on, is the gravel wetland something that goes in earlier or later? But it sounds like there's some revisions to come or more information to come, as you get the feedback from the stormwater review and process that.
Yep.
Okay. Richard?
Frank, I really still don't have any particular questions. I agree with Jen. There'll be more information coming. I wouldn't pretend to know the engineering questions involved. I'm a little more on the area around and the detention and the basins as well, maybe, but not yet.
Okay. Penny?
I have no question, Frank.
Oh my God.
it. I like the project.
Okay. Brendan?
I don't know how I could have a question if Penny did. No, I really don't have any questions. I like it. Thank you.
Eric?
Just as you all were giving that comprehensive overview. I appreciate the level of detail.
Right.
I'm just looking at sort of the logistics side of construction in terms of mitigating, sediment runoff and things like that with regard to fill that's imported and fill that's created. And excuse me if I missed it on one of the many sheets that were provided, but I guess where would areas for that be located in terms of on-site storage, given that it is also a used space during construction?
Maybe maybe I can start off with an answer to that. And the answer is, while we have a conceptual phasing plan for the different phases of construction for this, we don't really know specifically how the contractor is going to operate on the site. We have some suggestions and we have some general ideas, but the what's really up to them is, taking the stormwater protection plan and the logistics plan and kind of marrying them and making sure they follow the requirements. Um, Now, Jen, I don't know if we gave the phasing plan to Karen over in planning, and I copied you. I don't know if it's um, kosher to show that here, or we can talk about that maybe in more detail in the continuation, if that's what people want, the kind of information people want.
Yeah, if it's something that makes sense for a later date, that's perfectly appropriate. I just wanted to bring up just the thought while I had it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, there's no question it's going to be a tight site. There is, we're trying to again balance the needs that we know the contractor is going to have with the needs of the school for, creating some or preserving some outdoor play space for the kids. Um, and I think probably makes sense to talk about that in more detail when we have the drawing in front of us.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces here. Do we have anybody in the audience on this one?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay. Joanne, I'm unmuting you.
Hi there. Thank you. This is Joanne Wyckoff. I live at 154 Turner Road. I'm also on the Water Resources Commission. My question, I was happy to hear that you're doing certain there's catchment structures as part of the building. Are those am I to understand that that means the water catchment that you're doing is going to be the way the plantings can be irrigated, so there won't be extra irrigation needed?
Who wants to answer that on that team?
It looks like Tom, but I think he's
I
blocked.
think Tom might be. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm unmuting him. There we go.
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself and then didn't realize it doesn't, you can't take it back. Right. So yeah, there's been a discussion about water catchment systems. There isn't a specific water catchment system included in the project at this time. But there's also yeah, I'd have to go back and check now to make sure I have this right. There was discussion about including irrigation. I believe irrigation is included on the grass field only right now on the new Flannery field. So that is in the project. But there isn't nor should there be a need for specific irrigation for the other plantings around the site. They're being selected as native, drought tolerant species.
So they can take care of themselves.
It's a good point. You have all this project going on and a lot of landscaping, how to irrigate it.
Yeah, because at some point, I mean, during the establishment phase, they'll need irrigation, certainly. But once they establish themselves,
And you
to
don't.
Tom's point, they should be pretty good to go.
Self-sufficient.
So who would best be able to give a little bit more information on that, or where will that show up in the future?
Well, like I say, it's not included in the project right now. I mean, frankly, it would be an expensive system to employ some sort of catchment and water reuse for this project. It would be a significant budget impact to do that.
Well, I guess, we've had some other projects, say like Toll Brothers, where they drove their own wells to use during their project for irrigation and establishing plants and things like that. Because we know that municipal water is in short supply. It certainly would be something that ought to be at least considered. So I guess there's not a straightforward answer for that one.
Not at this time, but I hear what you're saying, and we'll bring this information back to the school building committee.
It's a rainy season.
I don't know if looks like Mrs. Wyckoff's muted. I don't know if she has another question, or we have a couple other hands up. You want to take somebody else?
I don't see any other hands raised. Oh, there it is. All right, Maureen Hurley, I'm unmuting you.
Can you hear me
Hurley?
now?
Mhm.
Yes.
Oh, great. So the question I had is with regard to I think it's the Flannery Field relocation. Aside, outside it shows a grass paver overflow parking. Could you tell me describe what that is?
Yes. So this is a system that actually has been employed at the Gates Middle School, and it's also being employed for a fire lane down at the southern end of the site. It's not colored on this drawing, but it's two parallel lines just north of or just up from that large green um, area there at the bottom of the site. What that is it's a gravel base, and then there is it's basically a heavy structural plastic cellular mat, if you will, that's laid over the gravel base, and that's filled with, sand and soil, and then it's overlaid with soil that's mixed in. So you have those cells, and then there's just a little bit of soil on top of that, which is where the grass is planted. It allows enough um, space for the grass to take root and grow just fine, but it's also drivable. You can drive on it. The lane on the southern end of the site is going to be weight rated for the largest fire apparatus to give them access if they should ever need to drive on that lane. So these parking spaces on the edges will be similar to that. So from a visual standpoint, it'll just look like grass lawn. It gets mowed and maintained like grass lawn, um, but they are parkable spaces.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I had was with regard to the sediment runoff. So is I'm presuming that the storage of materials is going to be on the Flannery Field. Is that accurate?
We don't know.
Don't know yet.
You don't know yet? Okay, so someone had mentioned that at a previous meeting.
Is
But
that
the
something that the engineers have any other feedback on? Or the applicants? Can you restate that question?
So at a previous meeting, and I know it was just a general statement that while the school was being built, there was going to be storage of all the materials, and it was most likely going to be on top of the grass field.
Well, the school's going to be there during the construction.
But
So
the grass field is where it says grass field now. That is a grass field already. I know it's going to be enlarged, but I'm just wondering if that's where the storage of soil and everything else is going to be or not.
Yeah, so I'll try to answer that. I mean, it's kind of the same answer that we just gave, which is it'll probably be more illustrative to look at the construction phasing plan
Okay.
to really illustrate that. But in general terms, what we've shown on that plan is kind of a dog leg of the construction area at the back of the site there that is going to cover probably about half of that existing grass lawn there. Um, the contractor may use that, may choose to use that for storing soil. They may choose to use it as a laydown area. That's the thing is we don't really know. It's really up to the contractor how they employ means and methods to get the project done. But
Okay.
we'll give them suggestions.
Okay, thank you.
okay. And it looks like Mrs. Wyckoff has her hand back up.
Well, I just wanted to come back and thank you for that answer. Is that ball field that will have to be, does that have an irrigation system now?
Yes, it does. Flannery Field has an existing irrigation system. Thank you for reminding me of that because that's an important point. Um, the town ordinance, I guess it is, states that you can't create a new
That's correct.
irrigation
No
system.
new ones, right?
Right, but you can basically re-up a
Right.
system that's already in use right now.
Right.
And so
But we
that's
on
what's
the
there.
commission really try to encourage all people, like creating ball fields, creating new schools, to do as much water catchment, to even water ball fields and water plantings as they can. I realize the cost is perhaps prohibitive, but we have such a water problem here that those kinds of expenses to the town are huge.
Understood. Understood. One thing that we've been looking for as the designers is clarity on the requirement for that is, it's one thing to say, yes, we would like to have water catchment, but what we need is some kind of requirement that says this is what it has to be, this is how big it has to be, this is how much or for how long does it have to supply an area, real design parameters that we can sink our teeth into. And that's sort of where we've stalled out on this one. So if you can help us with that, we would really appreciate that.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, does that answer your questions?
Yes,
No?
thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? So how long will this application process be going on for? What's the timeline or in terms of actually getting started here? And I know this planning board and I'm sure you've got some other things to do, but where do you
In terms of the construction schedule?
well, in starting like the permitting and actual approval starting, what's the anticipation for this?
Well, we've applied for the planning board permitting process, basically simultaneous with this one, and we're
Okay.
having our first hearing with them on Thursday. We understand already that is probably going to be a continued process, so that will probably stretch into the next month. You know, we're hoping that we can wrap up all the things that we need to wrap up in 2 meetings. In terms of how that dovetails with the overall construction schedule, we've got another, let's see, up until the end of the summer, really, before bid documents are done, and beginning of the summer, sorry, before bid documents are done, and bidding is happening during the summer months, and construction is slated to start in the fall of this year. So that's sort of the overall schedule that we're looking at here.
Thank you.
But yeah.
So a few questions or comments on this. Just I was looking at erosion control, and it seems like it surrounds the property. I'll guess something will get addressed by the planning board as well. But for the abutting properties, the way this land slopes, there's good provisions for erosion control. I think Eric touched on that a little bit, during construction and all the disturbance that gets managed well. And there was a development just to the left of this that went on, and they had issues with water coming off that property. They have a basin and all that, but it still created quite a bit of issues for the neighborhood. Beyond that, I know the soils here aren't awesome, that's for sure. So just want to make sure that there's enough erosion control in place. I think that the questions of, like means and methods, as you look at all that, to be sure that you got an awful lot of different things to address. The kids that are going to school, the site around it. It's not a simple project by any means. A lot of thought, I'm sure, is going into that. But provisions during construction always seem to be an issue for both the commission and the planning board. Are we going to continue this to hear, so we see where the planning board comes through, and then kind of readdress that? So do we have a time on when we want to continue this too?
Yes, sometime in March. I think March 31st would be the safest, just as far as being hopefully farther along with planning and have a chance to have them comment on the stormwater.
Okay. And how about the applicant? Do you want to, is that, are you in agreement with that? Do you want to try to get back in front of the commission sooner?
Well, speaking for the architecture, there's not a whole lot of design development that is going to happen at this point. We're really at the construction document and the detail process. So we would like to, get an answer in terms of where we stand with anything as soon as possible. So I understand that this process works a little bit in tandem with planning. As I said, we have our first hearing with them on Thursday, and I know their agenda is very full, so we may get continued to, early March there as well. Or sorry, even late March.
First meeting in March, Jen.
Well, I think the first one's too soon. We can do March 17th, and if it doesn't line up, we'll still have the 31st.
Oh, okay. Yeah, why don't we try to?
That seems fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there any other direction or questions or anything that any of the members have before we move on? Anything else you'd like to get for information?
Nope.
I guess any work in the road is that, I assume, probably at the end of the project, but just making sure that's spoken to as well, because that's just to know that that's happening.
This is also wetlands directly across the street.
Right. So there is included in the scope of the project at this time, the replacement of the force main in Ann Vinyl Road from the project up to the top of the hill where that four-way intersection is there. Yeah, that is part of the project at this time.
That's the sewer line replacement.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay. All right, you ready? Me to continue,
Sorry.
Frank?
Oh, I'm
Anybody
sorry.
else?
Sorry, this is Steve at Niche Engineering. I just add that we have the standard utility connections within Ann Vinyl Road, so water service and electric, et cetera, and drainage. So the whole palette. So we'll be working in the roadway.
Sure. Okay. Well, I think also to the point of the Water Resources Commission, any thoughts you can do on that, and think about how you're going to deal with this during construction and after would be a good consideration. Whether we did require other developments to have a water source to handle their irrigation, so it wasn't tapping the town's public water. Okay. All right, I'll take a motion.
I make a motion, we continue Hadley School until March 17th.
Second.
I will second that motion.
Brendan, all in favor? Richard?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
And Frank, yes. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. On behalf of our team, we thank you. We'll see you soon.
See you. A lot to do there. Thanks a lot.
Presentation.
279, 281 Old Oak and Bucket Road. Do we have a request for a continuation on that?
No,
I'm sorry.
not on Old Open
No,
Bucket.
not Old Oak and Bucket. Yeah, no, that we're
Okay.
doing that one.
All right. What do we have for that?
Jeff DeLisi here on behalf of the applicant.
Good evening.
Also with me, Brad Holmes should be promoted in case he has any comment as our wetland scientist, and Mark Casey. Mark, I don't know if Tony Esposito's on or not.
I think I saw him.
Yeah, so I suppose he's on the team as well. So the board's familiar with this project, 24 unit 40B. Been to the commission now. This probably is our second or third substantive hearing. We have our comprehensive permit. The Board of Health has indicated that once this process concludes, it will issue the septic approval. And so where we left off, I think it was at the end of November or beginning of December. We intentionally kind of pushed off a date far enough into the future, which was I think at the last meeting, actually, it was supposed to be, Jen, unless I'm wrong on that. And the purpose for that was such that we could uh, consider all of the peer review response, kind of package it up with your initial commentary, revise the plans such as to be responsive to your questions and concerns, as well as be able to answer any questions and concerns by the peer review engineer in the hopes of being able to close the meeting tonight and hopefully vote to approve. We did receive a um, peer review commentary from Lucas Engineering dated and we responded to it on December 16th. I can either ask Mark Casey to review with the board the submittal. I don't know if anyone from Lucas Engineering is here, but from our standpoint, um, we've been able to address all concerns, and we don't really have any outstanding items at this point. There have been some added buffer restoration in the form of mitigation um, in kind of between the retaining wall and the wetland or limit of work area. And that's probably the biggest issue. The other item that we discussed really had to do with the area of the reserve septic field. Um, it's something that we investigated, and what we've concluded is to not do the crossing, that we don't need to do the crossing unless and until there's a failure of the septic system at some point in the future, and the need at that point to utilize the reserve area. So there will be no work within that wetland for that crossing. There will be no work to replicate because there will be nothing necessary to replicate unless and until that time comes. And the way we've decided to deal with it is um, to request a condition that requires that the homeowner association at some point in the future, if necessary, would apply to the commission under the whatever condition, whatever the regulations state at that future time, to do the crossing and the reserve field. And that seemed to be something that was adequate to DEP. It seemed to be something that was adequate to Board of Health and is actually contemplated by Title V. So with that, I kind of defer to you. I don't know if you just want to vote to close and accept the submittals, or if you want Mark to go over any changes that were made. Um, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Joe.
Yep.
Jen?
Yeah, the questions that we had from Lucas were about the crossing and whether that was something that you wanted to have happen now or have happen when it's needed. So the consensus seemed to be that build that when it's needed. Don't build it now. So that's incorporated into the orders, and so then the replication wouldn't need to be done now either. That would, be something to go along with the wetland crossing if and when that's needed. And there is on one of the plans it shows areas where there's disturbance while the work is going on, but then at the end would be naturalized, I would say. Maybe some plantings but an area to not be lawn. So that was good that that was added in to the plan.
Right. Members, Richard,
No, I think I'm okay.
all right. Penny,
I think I put Penny to sleep.
Penny, you're muted.
I can't be.
Was. Yes, I was. I was talking to my cat, Frank. No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Brendan,
I'm good.
okay. Eric,
Just two quick ones for Jeff, I think. Just as it relates to some of the edits that you made to the orders, specifically former order 30 and former order 44. 30 was a beginning with a conservation commissioner or the commission's agent shall have the right to halt all work. And 44 began with if unforeseen problems occur during construction, which may affect the statutory interests of the Wetland Protection Act. You had suggested removal of those two specific orders. I was just curious as why those on the cutting room floor, so to speak.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Jen had forwarded to me draft orders, which I read from beginning to end. And as I read from the top to the bottom, each word, I realized that a few of the items were duplicative. So the language regarding halting, for instance, was already addressed, I think, in condition 25 and 26. Actually, I think it was 25.
Yeah.
And the other one had been previously addressed in items, former items 26 and 27. So it was just language that had already been captured and was restating it a second time. And as much as I understand the reason for redundancy at times, sometimes from a legal perspective and a practical perspective, it causes problems because it might be a change to one word here or there, and then somebody's left to interpret the conflict between the two. So I figured I'll get rid of the second one because it was the second one that I read that was duplicative, so to speak.
I figured that when reviewing the orders, but I just figured I would ask to.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yep.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
thank you, Eric. Do we have anybody in the audience on this one?
Yes, O'Reilly, I'm unmuting you.
Can you hear me?
We got you.
Okay. I just had a quick question.
Just we know.
Oh,
I
I'm
think
sorry.
we know who you are, but
Liz O'Reilly, 179 Maple.
thank you, Liz.
I just have a quick question. Maybe I missed it in some of the documents that I looked at. There was a lot of things stored on the property of the old farmhouse there. And I was just wondering if soil samples have been taken at any point, because I know one of the abutters has an underground oil tank also that's abutting this project. And down in the back, there had been a lot of storage of old boats and barrels and things. Did I miss it? Were there soil samples taken in this prior?
So, to my recollection, and I'm not always correct. This is the first time I'm hearing something about a question about soil testing in that area, but I could be wrong. I'm going to have to ask that Mark Casey, our engineer, speak to that to the extent he knows the answer.
Okay.
Okay for me to speak?
Yes,
Yep.
please.
Yeah, my recollection is one of the things we advised the client to do was have a 21E prepared. And I actually recommended a firm that I know the owner of the firm for years, great at what he does. And the 21E was done by the applicant. So
Okay. So and those things are up at the town hall?
I believe they'd be with the filing with CBA.
Yeah. If they're anywhere there's EBA, they're not at conservation. I believe that we did file with the zoning board I think it's called a phase one site assessment, if I'm correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
If there was any indication of an area that would have needed any kind of remediation, it would have got picked up on the site walk on the
Okay.
21E.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have another hand up.
Yes, Elizabeth Murphy. I'm unmuting you. There you go.
Great, thank you. My name is Elizabeth Murphy. I live at 268 Old Oaken Bucket Road. I'm curious, are all of these changes available for public viewing at Town Hall? I feel like every meeting I've gone to on this where it's actually come to this point, there have been changes. I'm just curious who is able to view all these changes?
They're all public.
Okay,
So-
so they're
so-
available at
Let
Town
let
Hall?
Jen,
Is
I'm
that what
sorry.
you're saying, Penny?
Let's let Jen answer that. All right.
Yes, what's been submitted to conservation is available to view.
Okay.
And I believe if there's other things that whether it's the ZBA or whatever, you could go to those departments, and get copies of that as well.
And that would include the traffic studies?
I'm not sure who you would speak to for the traffic studies. I think if you come in,
That would be zoning board.
okay,
Traffic with zoning board, yeah.
Everything, if I can just chime in here.
Sure.
Every scrap of paper that's been submitted to any department of the town of Scituate, whether it be zoning, conservation, board of health, everything is available for public review. Always.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I thought I saw somebody else's hand up.
Liz O'Reilly, is your
O'Reilly?
hands?
I'm all set.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Are we ready to have a
Close
motion on
issue.
this?
I make a motion that we close and issue the cottages.
Well, why don't we have a motion to close? I don't think we need a motion to issue. Do you want to do the orders on this first, Jen? How do you want to do that?
Well, we've already.
I would say we're prepared to close an issue if
Okay.
people are okay with the orders.
Okay.
And while it's open, there was that one question on condition new number 49, old number 51. And I had proposed some language because I misunderstood what the condition was referencing. I thought it was referencing the replication area, not the restoration area. And I've been corrected. So, Jen, I just want to make sure that you're aware I have no issues with that condition as you drafted it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So Penny's made a motion to
I'll
close
second
an
it.
issue. Richard seconded. All in favor? Brendan
Yes.
and Eric.
Yes.
And Frank, yes. Great. Thank you all for that one. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Good night. 61 Woodland. Are we
Oh, we're continuing both of those.
in 54 Woodland?
Yeah. Do you want me to make the motion?
Well, start
Let's-
with 89 and vinyl. We're
And that's a
continuing
continue also.
89 and vinyl.
I'm sorry, I jumped over
Yep.
that. My
right.
apologies. So what? So 89 and vinyl?
I make a motion to continue 89 in vinyl to the 24th of February.
Okay, that's a motion from Penny.
Seconded.
From Richard. All in favor, Brendan?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
And Frank, yes. Okay,
then
61 Woodland.
I make a motion, we continue 61 Woodland to February 24th.
That's from Penny. Second.
I'll second that.
From Brendan. All in favor, Richard?
Yes.
And Eric?
Yes.
And Frank, yes. And 54 Woodland.
I make a motion, we continue 54 Woodland to February 24th.
And then
Second that.
from Eric. All in favor, Brendan?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Frank, yes. Great, thank you. Well, that moved through a couple. 21 Central Ave.
It'll be here next month.
Where is my? Where is she? What's that? I've shifted around a few things here.
We need deputies and SWIP. And we've
I got
already
it. I got it. So, on February 10th, 2025 at 6 p.m., the Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700 Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding a notice of intent application of South River Marina for the construction of 10 housing units associated appurtenances, whatever, and a boathouse located at 21 Central Ave and 7 Marshfield Ave, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Information on how to access the virtual meeting is available on the website. And who do we have here?
Chair Snow, good evening. This is Adam Brodsky. I'm a local environmental and land use lawyer, and I represent the applicant South River Marina Realty LLC. Ken Duval and Scott Herzog are the managers of the LLC, and South River owns 21 Central Avenue. I'm also representing Union Street Realty Trust LLC. Union Street owns 7 Marshfield Avenue, and Ken R. Scott are also managers of that LLC. And I'm here this evening with Tom Przerski, our professional engineer with Merrill Engineers and Surveyors. So I'm guessing that the majority of commissioners are familiar with these properties. The South River Marina and Boatyard are located at 21 Central, and the Lobster Pound is located at 7 Marshfield. These properties were rezoned in 2019 to be included within the Hummerock Village Residential Overlay District to promote residential development. And several members of the commission may remember that we had proposed a bulkhead improvement project in 2021, which also included rehabilitating and shifting slightly the existing boat ramp, which is also used by the general public. The Concom in 2021 granted and ordered conditions, but that project got tied up at MEPA at the state level. We were proposing at that time to fill in the existing travel lift pier That's that indentation you see on the site plan, and Tom will explain this to you in more detail, which is presently in disrepair and no longer used for a travel lift. The travel lift is that very large crane-like device used to put boats in the water. There's no purpose any longer for that travel lift pit. But back in 21, despite that, we had reviewed the project with DEP prior to beginning permitting. That became an issue. And so the clients needed to redesign the project. It's taken us several years to come back. We've redesigned the waterside portion of the project, as well as added a residential component consistent with the zoning change. Again, Tom is going to explain the project in more detail, but we're proposing to improve the bulkhead, but we're going to be keeping the travel lift pit. We're essentially repairing it in place, and that will be used by a marine forklift to place boats in the water as opposed to a travel lift. We're also on the south side of the project going to be adding a soft solution to stabilize the site, and that's the portion of the site closest to the bridge where there's existing parking. We're also proposing to rehabilitate the boat ramp in the identical fashion as to what previously was approved by the commission in 2021. We're proposing to raise the existing boat repair building. That's that very large dilapidated metal building on 21 Central, and replacing it with a small modern building that will also include facilities for marina customers. The property will continue to be used to support the existing 90-slip marina. And with respect to the lobster pound building, that is going to be raised. And we're proposing to construct 10 new residential units on the property. We've filed simultaneously with the planning board for a special permit and site plan review for the land side improvements. And we filed that to satisfy our requirement to apply for all obtainable permits under the Wetlands Protection Act. The property has a number of wetland resource areas, including mapped barrier beach, riverfront area, as well as land subject to coastal storm flowage. And the project will require state level review with MEPA. I've been in discussions with Ms. Smith about how we sequence this project, and the preference of both Ms. Smith as well as DEP is to submit an E&F for MEPA sooner rather than later. So we will be asking the commission this evening to continue the public hearing, and we can discuss, excuse me, timing a little bit further. There's one technical issue that I thought I would preview, and it's alluded to in the project narrative that we submitted for the project. Property is obviously located within floodplain, that is land subject to coastal storm flowage. We have both an AE elevation 10 as well as an AE elevation 13 on the properties. There's no performance standard for land subject to coastal storm flowage under the State Wetlands Protection Act. You do reference it in your regulations, but there's no more stringent requirement, at least with respect to A zone. Notwithstanding, in order to demonstrate that we're protecting the interests of flood control, we need to comply with the flood-resistant construction requirements in the Massachusetts Building Code. None of the structures that exist presently comply with the state building code, so we're bringing the property into compliance. The new residential units, as Tom will explain, are designed to comply completely with the most stringent requirements. Those are going to be constructed on pilings, and the lowest structural elements of those units are going to be well above the design flood elevation. The issues with the new proposed boat repair building, we simply can't elevate that building and still get boats in and out of the building. We want to preserve the water dependent use on this property. The complication is that because this is mapped as Barrier Beach under the Wetlands Protection Act, it's assumed that you have either coastal beach or coastal dune on the project. And if you have a coastal dune on the project, you need to comply with what's known as Appendix G in the building code, which essentially requires velocity zone flood protection. Again, the lowest structural member has got to be at least 2 feet above the base flood elevation of the design flood elevation. So we can't, with respect to the boat repair building, put that up on pilings and elevate it because we can't get boats in and out of the building. There is an exception under the state building code. So if the Conservation Commission finds that, one, if there is coastal dune on the property, that coastal dune is not significant, then the building commissioner can issue a building permit for the boat repair building at grade. It determines that Appendix G would not apply. The building would be floodproof, so I want you to understand that it will be floodproof, but simply not elevated. Again, because this is mapped as Berry Beach, it's presumed to be either coastal dune or coastal beach. And we will demonstrate to you that on the site, which is completely developed, there's neither resource area. It's a regulatory issue, not a practical issue on the ground. And so simply because it's mapped as Berry Beach, the assumption is you have to design to the most stringent requirements under Appendix G. So we will be demonstrating to the commission later on in this process that there is no functional coastal dune on the property and asking for a determination of non-significance. So with that rather lengthy introduction, I'm happy to turn this over to Tom to give you a more technical presentation. Again, the expectation is that we're going to be asking for the continuance, and we'd like to have an opportunity to discuss that with the commission regarding dates. We need more information to figure out the timing of a filing with BEPA, and I've got a suggestion as to how to deal with that issue. So our goal this evening is to get feedback from the commission as well as the public, but we will be coming back for a more detailed review of this project. So Tom, do you want to take over from here, please?
Sure, thank you. Commissioners, my name is Tom Pazurski. I am the Marine Services Director for Merrill Engineers, and I'm the Senior Project Manager on this particular project. The property contains about 75,465 square feet, all of which is contained in land subject to coastal storm flowage. Adam has already gone over the particular resource areas present. You will see on our plan that we have in the dark blue line the mean high water. You can see the dash brown line that we have at the division line from the zone AE, which is 10 on the South River side. And then it's also 13 on the Central Ave side. I'd like to point out that the project location is probably about 500 feet due east, as you all probably know, of the beach on Hummerock. And on the beach itself, there's a 3-foot high concrete wall, which inhibits the migration of sand and sedimentary deposits to even supply a coastal dune area. And on top of that, we have fully developed residential area, Central Ave. We have 3 roadways around the site, Marshfield Ave, Central Ave, and Webster Street. So then the next thing that we want to look for is, do we have a functioning coastal dune? Do we have any topography here? Do we have any sediment source? Do we have any ridges? Do we have any vegetation? And the answer to all of those questions is no, we do not. We're not debating that we have a barrier beach. We have mapped land containing shellfish to the east of the site in the South River, but it's also mapped as a prohibited shellfish area. Now, one of the things that we have here is we have a drainage system with no treatment. We have an antiquated septic system on site. We have buildings that basically act as barriers for flood water. So the storm water hits them and they have to deflect and go around, cause damage to these structures, deflect water to adjacent structures. So it's not a good situation. The storm water also receives no treatment. We also have a antiquated block bulkhead wall, which also transitions into a timber pile travel lift with rotted sheet metal and everything else. It's all in bad condition. On the southwest side of the site, adjacent to Marshfield Ave, we're losing real estate over there. You look at some of the older plans, they've lost probably 20 or 30 feet of real estate. They've put blocks in there to slow it down, not our client, the previous owners. And we have hired ECR Environmental, Brad Holmes, and their coastal geologist, Stan Humphreys, to assist us in restabilizing, replanting this slope. Sean Papich is also on the project to provide native landscape and plantings. We did do an alternatives analysis. First alternative being doing nothing. The second alternative is to repair the existing structures, which didn't quite make a lot of sense, nor would we be allowed to do so because the replacement value is more than 50%. And the third alternative is the proposed project. The one thing that I think is important to note is that we have about 23,000, almost 300 square feet of open space that's being created by this project. And most of it is going to be along the South River side. You can see we're creating a nice perimeter landscaping here. We're also providing a 10-foot wide public access walkway and a crosswalk that'll head down Marshfield Ave towards the South River, come up through the site and traverse the site to our top of our property line. That is a requirement of DEP under the Chapter 191 waterways regulations. The other things, as you have in the report there from ECR Environmental, some of the things that I already talked about of these non-significance of which we are seeking for the barrier beach. And Stan goes into a little bit more detail. And we don't have the ability of the dune to erode in response to coastal beach conditions. There really isn't any dune volume present. There are no vegetative cover present. There's certainly no natural vegetative cover you would find in a dune. The dune, which there isn't one, it goes from the beach heading westerly. There's no ability for sand to migrate from the beach onto the site. It's a flat site. And there's no ability for birds to nest as habitat on the site. The other thing that we're doing is we are completely upgrading the on-site sanitary disposal systems. We've completed official soil exams on site for the septic system. We've completed soil exams for the drainage system. So we're going to have a fully compliant stormwater system, septic system with a nitrogen treatment system. And then we're taking all the clean roof runoff and we're recharging it into the ground prior to discharge from the South River. And that design is designed on the extreme precipitation tables for the larger volumes. The stormwater parking lot system is a multifaceted system that consists of bioretention rain gardens. They're precast structures with the treatment media and plantings in it, grass swales, hydrodynamic separators, and then, as I previously mentioned, we're doing the proper thing, which is to segregate clean roof runoff and discharge it into the ground, which is really going to give it a nice touch because we don't have that right now at this point. And any of the parking lot runoff is going to be treated. And as far as the new marine services building, they'll have floor drains in it where anything that leaks inside the building, that will go into a sealed oil water separator. These structures themselves are going to be fully compliant with the IBC regulations for the residential structures. There'll be piles that'll be elevated to the lowest supporting member. In this case, will be elevation 15 because it's going to be the AE +2, which is 13. And then there'll be parking underneath these buildings in slats. As far as the Marine Services Building, that is a functionally dependent use. So what that means is we have to be able to access boats to get in and out of there to service the boats. The main area where the boats are going to be worked on will be wet, dry flood proofed, which will have flood vents on it to allow the water to flow and resist those forces. There'll be a small portion of the facility where the members are, which is wet flood proofed. That's basically about it. I'll be happy to address any questions or concerns the commission might have.
Thank you. So, Jen, do you want to comment first? Just that I think everybody's heard this, that this is like an overview. Have any thoughts that you want to give to the applicant this evening, that they can work into this? But we're going to be this is going to be continued for a while.
Yeah.
But why don't we let Jen address it first, and then go to the members and see if we have anybody in the audience.
Sure. So they mentioned the resources in the area, and I guess that's the big question here. But otherwise, speaking broadly, it's certainly maybe complicated, but promising. And I think it would be beneficial to have those comments from the MIPA review before we get really into the details. Having said that, we do want to have anything in Webster Street kind of worked out, so we understand, that everybody on Webster Street is in agreement with the work going on for the boat ramp. And I'm not sure this is the time that you want me to go through my thoughts on functioning of a dune. But I think there's a lot more comments to come.
Okay. Richard?
Yeah, couple things. And I'm nitpicking on this as far as what Tom said. He's absolutely right the way he described the wall up at the beach and all of that, but there is a hole in the wall that comes onto Marshfield Avenue, and in the winter, it is not as high as the wall is, and there are times and have been times when the water has come into Marshfield Ave and down and in front of the lot, that the entrance to this whole area. I would not say in the last 30 years it's been an area that's totally been terribly flooded and all, but the water does migrate down there in the worst storms, and I just would want to point that out. And Jen stole my thunder on Webster Street. That will have to be dealt with as well. Other than that, I think we're too early. I'd want to see the results of MIPA, and I think it's, as Jen said, it's promising, and it certainly is something that would be helpful to this area.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Penny?
Yeah, I had to take an important call. I think I'm very interested in this project, and I can't wait to see how it goes forward. I want to see what MEMA has to say and so forth, but I do like the project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brendan? You don't have to feel compelled to.
Just had to get
it's a lot
Sorry.
to take in here. It's a big project, and we've got some time to consider it. So
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm going to withhold comment or question at the moment.
okay, thank you. Eric?
Just a clarification question. So, as I understand, the only structure being proposed that is requiring us to review, or in the future potentially review, whether or not this is a significant dune, is the boat service structure, correct?
Correct.
So the rest of the project does not require consideration. It's just that one building. Okay.
Correct.
Understood. I think I'm going to withhold any other further questions, but I was curious about that. So thank you for answering that.
Thanks, Eric. Do we have anybody in the audience that's wishes to comment at this time? Questions?
I don't see any hands raised. I'm not sure. Adam, I'm sorry if I missed this, but for the previous order of conditions, that's something at some point in this process we would want to, clean up or close out, but just to make sure that's on the list of things to do.
Ms. Smith, yes, we've agreed. We'll submit a request for a certificate of compliance indicating that that project was not constructed. And I'm in touch with counsel for the condominium association to address the Webster Street issues. The condominium association had previously consented in 2021 to the work on the boat ramp. We have a new set of trustees, and I'm working with their council now. So we will resolve that prior to the next time we meet.
And then I did want to add, just difference between this project and the other project is the other one was just the bulkhead. So in this case, we are seeing, all that they want to do on the site. I guess I'm assuming, but I should ask that the bulkhead work is needed for the project to happen. I mean, that's why we have all of this here.
Yes, the bulkhead is in disrepair. It's a substantial investment in order to do that work. But yes, we likely could not do the land side improvements without first addressing the bulkhead and the travel lift pit, which is falling into the river.
So that work is going to be done under the other orders?
No, sir.
No, chairs, no. So the other orders are going to be closed, and this will be a new order of conditions that would address both the water side improvements as well as the land side improvements. We combined them for purposes of the order of conditions to make sure that we are not segmenting the project in any fashion, because we knew that we needed to go to MIPA.
And I just, when I was looking at this, I saw improvements, like a soft improvement to parts of the revetment. Is there also work to be done with the stone one? Did I see that? I don't remember seeing that detail in the plans.
So on the south side of the property, where there's erosion and there is no bulkhead, the prior owner had assembled these blocks, and was actually supposed to implement a soft solution that had been approved by DEP. I want to say back in the late 90s. That work was never done. So we're actually proposing to do that, a more modern version of that project. So we'll be removing the concrete blocks and the debris and essentially constructing a soft solution to stabilize that slope, to address the erosion.
Okay. And the marina is going to stay in place, right? The boat
Correct.
marina, this is
Correct.
all going to remain.
Correct. One of the goals is to preserve the water dependent use. And so the marina is staying, the boat repair is being reduced in scope. The additional element are the residential units.
And the boat access ramp, is that, I'm trying to remember when it was the condos, is that accessible to the public as well as?
Yes. So that is, it is accessible to the public. I can't explain how this was permitted, but a good portion of it is on my client's property. A small portion of it is on the condominium property. But as a result of the development of the condominium has got responsibility for maintenance associated with that. So my clients are willing to undertake certain additional undertakings with respect to the boat ramp. We want to make it safer, make it more accessible, and we're also committed to keeping it public, despite the fact that it's on private property.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
You made a reference previously to riprap work.
Right.
If you look at the sheet that we're looking at now, we are not going to do anything to the riprap slope work in this particular area. This was completed as a result of the reconstruction of the bridge, and it has the slope stabilized for the bridge abutments in that whole area there. So what we're doing is we're going to stabilize the slope on our area that's not riprapped naturally.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a quick question on that bulkhead. The change in scope from the original proposal to what you'll be doing within this proposal, like a 10,000 foot sort of explanation as to how the original is different from what you'll be doing within this proposal to get this project through.
Thank you, Mr. DiTomaso. The original proposal had the bulkhead extending in front of the travel lift pit, and that area was going to be filled. And then the bulkhead was going to continue further south, where we're proposing a soft solution. And so again, we had reviewed that project with DEP Waterways prior to filing that application. But once we got into MEPA and the MEPA process, it was determined that that was not well received. They considered that the filling of the travel lift pit to be intertidal, and they did not want us to fill it. So we had to withdraw from MEPA. And again, since we needed to go back to the drawing board, it made sense to work on the land side improvements also and come back.
Thank you for the clarification on that. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam.
Welcome.
And Tom.
Well,
okay. Let's see. And I guess obviously there'll be review of, you say there's some degraded drainage and septic and whatnot. 10 units of housing is going to add a lot more septic load or whatever. That's all going to be adequately addressed.
Chair Snow, just for your information, the planning board has retained John Chesia to peer review the project. He'll be addressing stormwater and septic.
Thank you. I think I'm good for tonight. How do we want to think about continuing this, Adam?
I was going to suggest, if you would not mind putting us on for your last meeting in March, because we need to get our internal schedule together to figure out when we can reasonably file with MEPA. It takes a fair amount of time to develop that information. And then there are only sort of two windows where you can file for MEPA, the middle of the month, the end of the month. Once we're in MEPA, we'll have a better understanding. We know what the statutory or the regulatory timetables are. So what I was going to suggest is continue to March. Maybe we need a minute. We'll tell you we intend to file on such and such a date. We're going to need a total of 60 days. And then perhaps we can continue further on. I just didn't want to guess at a date at some point in the future.
Sure.
We're trying to keep this, and to your point, I mean, you want to control your schedule also. I just did not want to pick a random date 6 months from now, and that either be unrealistic or unnecessary.
Okay. So just so that if there are people that happen to be watching or following, whatever. So we're going to continue this to the end of March, then, but really that meeting is going to be you giving us
an update,
maybe some a little bit different information, but more a timeline.
Yes, and again, I hope to resolve some of the outstanding details that we could clean up, but it's really to give you a timeline for review.
Great. Okay.
I'd make a motion to continue this to the 31st of March.
That's from Richard. Oh, go ahead, Jen.
What?
Did you want to hear any abutter comments?
I thought I asked.
Oh, you did, but there is one.
I do have a hand up.
Okay, sure.
All right. I am unmuting Humreal.
You want to just state your name and address, please?
Oh, yeah, sure. Russell Clark, 8 Webster Street.
Good evening.
Evening. Hey, looks pretty cool. And we did have some concerns, and I guess at this time you guys have answered a lot of stuff and looked at things. But the retaining walls, does that fit within the coastal dune? Especially the retaining wall would be on the south side of my property to support a septic system. Maybe a question to the engineer.
Tom or Adam?
Yeah, it'd have to be evaluated for storm damage prevention. We actually we slid the septic system further away from your house on that side, so we might be able to eliminate that and slope that off instead to give you a little more room over there. It was a little bit tight in that first design, so.
So that's not included in these plans that are here now?
No, we what happened was, to be quite frank, is there's a DEP approved IA septic system we selected. It was a longstanding use system. Didn't meet we found out after we put it on the plans, we were hearing it didn't meet the performance standards, so we selected a different system that works better. It gives a nitrate system, so we had to reconfigure part of the septic components. And then when I was looking at it, I said, if I lived on 8 Webster Street, I might want that a little further away from my property, so I slid it away more.
I guess to Russ's question, or Tom, Adam, is in any of these, we wouldn't allow the construction of something that would divert water or push it back onto another property. So I think that's the gist of your question, Russ.
That's correct, Chairman Snow. Yes.
So I think just something for you to consider when you're working through this. I don't know if you followed the whole hearing, Russ, but they're going to go for a MEPA review. So this is going to be out for a while, but it's certainly good to get input on any concerns so they can address it further.
100%. I just want to be on the record, and that's exactly what it is, because we do get quite a bit of water flow over that seawall and down Webster Street. And I'm just afraid of it pooling in there if that grade gets raised up around my property.
Got it.
So it's a concern. And like I say, I just want to bring it up.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And Chair Snow, and for the commissioners, just so you know, we're getting comments constantly from the various town departments. So we're revising things as we go along, and obviously you will be presented with the final revised plans to review. So this
do appreciate that. Thank you.
A work in progress.
Okay, great. Thank you all. So we started to continue this. I think we got a motion from Richard, a second from Penny.
Yep.
And we don't have anybody else in the audience.
And that's a continue to March 31st.
31st, correct.
Yep. So all in favor, Brendan?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
And Frank, yes. Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, folks.
Quite a project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be interesting.
Let's see. Where are we?
We're time to go to bed.
Ha. I don't think.
Can I just give a real quick open space update, please?
No, you didn't ask for it earlier.
Well, it's
Not on
on
the agenda.
here.
All right, go ahead, Penny.
Just a real quick, I just want to give a shout out, not this past weekend, the weekend before. Ed Walton, who was our trails guy, and Susan Harrison went out, who was a select person, went out to Mordecai Lincoln with me, and without them, I don't think I'd get half my stuff done out there. I can't say enough for them. We had to trim some stuff around this lovely, beautiful big cedar tree that was getting killed with all this junk growing in it. And we spent 3 hours out there, nonstop chainsaw, and Susan and I lugged the stuff to the woods. But I just wanted to give them a shout out. I appreciate volunteers. Without them, I don't know where we'd be. Thank you.
That's nice, Penny. Thank you very much. And I know the work's continuing out there.
Yeah, no, I still have some more things, but we're getting there. It's gonna be beautiful this summer.
I believe that. So a couple of requests for certificates, but thanks to Ed and Susan for their extra efforts. Appreciate it.
They are great people.
Certificate of compliance for 588 Country Way and
Yes, that was
24 Atlantic.
Yes, they both were septic related. Countryway had been given a partial, and they never followed up on the full one, so that's met all of its growing seasons. And then 24 Atlantic Drive was an old one, as you can tell from the DEP number.
Okay, and you're good with those, obviously.
Yes, I'm good with Countryway, and Atlantic Drive is well over 30 years old.
Okay. All right. And minutes. Does anybody want to make a motion on the minutes?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Second.
Yep, me.
Richard, all in favor. Brendan.
Yes.
Eric.
Yes.
Frank, yes. Okay. Is that it?
That's it.
Oh, afraid so.
To adjourn. Brenda, you don't want to go home?
I'm waiting for a motion.
I made a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay.
All in favor, Brendan?
Yes.
Eric?
Just say yes.
Yes. And Frank, yes. Thank you very much.
Have a good night,
Night,
guys.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Night.
See you, everyone.